Hello, my name is Zahar Karetsky and this is the Transitions Visions podcast, a podcast series about and for the transitions research community. Today's vision is brought to you by Harro van Lente, Professor of Science and Technology Studies at Maastricht University in the Netherlands and Senior Fellow at Aachen University in Germany. We discussed where scientific ideas come from and cover a lot of ground actually, from his own PhD research that has started the sociology of expectations to what kind of scientists are more likely to have a breakthrough. And believe it or not, we also somehow managed to talk about the American Beauty, the movie, as well as Rocky the movie. So find out how and why right now. And a bit of a side note, in this recording you may notice that I'm a bit low energy. This is because this year has been a bit exhausting for me, and I'm sure you have noticed this with the dropped regularity of these episodes. This holiday season has helped a lot in terms of getting back into the flow. So apologies for the low energy in this interview, and hopefully see you in the next Transitions Visions. Happy holidays! Hi, Harro.
Hello.
Welcome to
Yes.
the podcast.
Good to sit together again.
You're a professor at Maastricht University.
Yes. So I'm here now for 10 years,
Yeah.
and so that's a long stretch. And I'm also a senior fellow at the RWTH Aachen, and they have a Kate Hamburger colleague on cultures of research, and I'm there for half a year. So that is a nice a break for me, and it's another way to engage with colleagues and to be a fellow and have fellows. So it's a good time.
But you're an STS researcher. You did a lot in transitions actually.
Yeah, so I have been in STS from the beginning. Maybe the early beginning was a bit more like philosophy of science and technology, and then gradually the philosophy of science became more sociological because of all these internal developments since Kuhn actually. So it became more social studies of science that merged with philosophy of science, and I also remembered indeed that became STS. So from the beginning I was not so much aware that I was working in STS. It was, say, technology dynamics, so thinking about technology and society, technological change. But then at the moment, so around in the 90s, the STS term became more a familiar abbreviation, and then later indeed something like transition studies emerged, and in which people like Johan Schot and Frank Geels are prominent. But I knew these people as STS people, so it's for me it looks a bit more like a separate stream, and later on also more other disciplines found their way into transition studies like economic geography or social theory at large. So it's I won't say it's an offspring of STS, but there are some clear intellectual connections.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think they now interact, these two fields, in a substantial way?
Yes. There is at least interaction in terms of personnel overlap, so people contributing to both fields, publishing in both fields. So there's a strong link. But indeed, so the two fields are quite separate in terms of journals. So there have been new journals publishing for transition studies and the traditional ones for STS. So there is overlap in terms of people publishing in both and going to different conferences and so on, and knowing each other. But there's also, I think, an internal overlap of STS trying to become, struggling as always with the question how not only be analytical but also critical and being a change agent that has been part of STS since the beginning, and that is so much more prominent in transition studies, which is focusing on how to enforce and how to invite transitions, how to support it. So that is more, activist from the beginning in its foundation. But on the other hand, well, there's also a lot of people thinking in transition about, well, how to understand this in the first place, and then it's easily connects with STS. So both are struggling with this duality of activism and understanding, and and there, well, this dual struggle, there's a lot of overlap for both of them. So
I want to now jump into a bit of your personal involvement or contribution. I guess sociology of expectations is what you are known for in STS. So in STS, positionality matters.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find out where the idea of sociology of expectations came from. Was it purely an intellectual idea, or was it something that you have been sort of living with?
Yeah, well, it started with a project, a PhD project on strategic niche management. That was the original idea. I started on this project with supervisor Arie Rip. It was his idea that, strategic niche management, everybody knows this. And he wanted to have some further scholarly elaboration of this idea. And I started with economic theories of change, evolutionary economics, which was strange for me. I came from more philosophical and engineering background, so it was quite a transition. And then I discovered this idea of what Arie Rip called the quasi-evolutionary idea, so that variation and selection are not independent, but that variation is informed by expectations, and that selection is also shaped by enactors. So they are not truly independent, but there are some interdependencies, so quasi-evolutionary. And I was intrigued with this idea of expectations, and once I start to read and to look around, and especially be immersed in this field of engineers, then so that really captured me, and that so this idea of working in a fictive world in which you assume that the things you have in mind are already accomplished, and then start to think, how to get there. So that was so prominent when I did my field work in various rounds of engineers. Then so that really intrigued me a lot, and I started to read about that in sociological theories of Merton, but also I wrote a chapter now on Ortega y Gasset, the philosopher, on how we imagine our lives and then start to behave according to that. That was really informing me a lot, and that also gave quite another view on expectations than just in the quasi-evolutionary theory. So it became a bigger topic, and I dropped the whole strategic niche management ambition. So I focused on and so that was in the early 90s, and a bit later, in between I did all kinds of other things. A bit later, other scholars like Cornelia Conrad and Nick Brown, we found each other, and we made a set of workshops on expectations, and then we also coined this term sociology of expectations. So that is after the fact. I didn't invent that term, but the term was to capture our collaborative effort on working on this. And Nick Brown had been working a lot on medical applications and regimes of hope, and Cornelia was much more in the field of energy studies, and that was a good set of workshops that really created the common framework And well, I think it's now the Borup et al. Paper that is the sort of go-to if you want to know about this. But well, still, and of course we have elaborated this a bit differently. So my view on this is a bit different than what Cornelia Conrad is doing and what Nick Brown is doing, but well, doesn't matter. So I think it's good that it's now visible and it's usable as a version of the sociology of expectations. Yeah.
Talking about performativity of expectations, have you noticed this playing out beyond an intellectual idea, beyond the case studies? Does it play out in other non-technological situations?
Is the general idea of performativity?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, indeed. So no, I think that is a basic sociological starting point. That statements are not just claims that can be true or not, but they are part of how life unfolds itself. And so yeah, statements do things, and that is part of the STS interest in language and ordering and language performing all kinds of things. So, but I think indeed with science and technology, language about the future is very prominent, much more than in other fields, and also it's more prominent than in other fields, but it's quite generic. So also the way we talk about our own lives, we have all kinds of ideas about the future that are part of our decisions and how we assess our own actions and those of others. So I think it's quite generic.
For some reason, the character of Rocky comes to mind. He believed, and he made it.
No. Okay, so that's a good point, because often that is the sort of very extreme form that people and then I really would like to stress it's a sociology of expectations. It's not the psychology of expectations. So Rocky is really maybe the extreme form of psychology of expectation, that you by imagining something you would like to achieve, then that really is a resource to get there. But the sociology is a bit different, that it really is not something that even if you don't want to engage with it, you cannot ignore it. So so that is it becomes something more impersonal and part of the reality you live in.
One of the things that Latour wrote is that he lamented the weaponization of STS, questioning the expert.
Yeah, so my thoughts are, and I'm not sure whether I'm fully in line with Latour there, but what I really like is that you make a distinction between... So, with knowledge, the strange thing happens that once we know how it is made, then we think it is not true anymore. But that is strange. I mean, if you think about building a bridge, knowing how a bridge is built, then after the building, the bridge is really real. It has all kinds of real consequences in terms of connecting places and to dividing places and all the things that bridges do, intended or non-intended, but they are real. So you cannot question that. And it has been made. You can study that, how it has been made. And the same with facts and knowledge. So that has been made. So it requires effort. It requires dedication, instruments, networks. Yeah, in a similar way. But once we now see how it has been made, then automatically the response is, then it is not true. It's not a fact anymore. And that is a strange reaction. So maybe it's a transitional thing that we used to live in a universe where we thought, knowledge is something that has been there all the time. We only discover it. So a more Platonistic idea of knowledge. And that we now move to an era where we know, knowledge is produced, but once it is produced, it is real. And it is true. And So, so yeah, and maybe in this transitional period, it's more confusing to think, well, if it's been made, then it's just an opinion, and then you can discard it. Well, that is strange. I mean, the bridge is built, but you cannot discard it. You cannot ignore it. There is a bridge. So there can be fake bridges. They think, well, yeah, it's a stupid bridge. It looks like a bridge, but once you enter it, it will not work as a bridge anymore. So the things that it's seeming to perform doesn't perform. So, and I think the same is with fake news. You think, oh yeah, now I have a lead, but once you follow up on it, it will collapse. So. So you need something like quality control, like you can have quality control of bridges, and you can never be sure. There can be an earthquake that the bridge collapses anyhow. So yeah, it's not for 100% sure, but still there can be quite good arguments that this is a good bridge and this is a fake bridge. So you have the same thing with knowledge, and yeah, so there can be all kinds of means to make knowledge more robust and to show that it's different from fake news. So yeah, yeah, and it's worth the effort, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always I do these talks because it's interesting to follow the thinking process, especially for PGs, especially for people and for junior researchers to understand how more established colleagues think and have thoughts and have developed their ideas. And one of the things you are currently working, so can we talk a bit about epistemic imaginaries? What these are and what has intrigued you about it?
Yeah, epistemic imaginaries. So that is the that is the term, that is the label that I now use to flag the things I'm interested in, and so these are imaginaries in a research field about what are the next steps. So what is at stake? What should we try to achieve in the field? What will bring you, say, the Nobel Prize if you achieve it? Or what are more realistic ways of going further in your career? What choices are useful? What is maybe a bad choice? So what is a safe strategy to build your career on? So these are ideas in fields, and it's based on, of course, the recognition that it's never dictated in a field which directions you should go. There are multiple options. Well, this is typically STS. And then the question arises, why would you go to the left and not to the right? And and then my idea is that these choices are informed by collective ideas about where to go. And I was interested in this because there have been quite some efforts in the last decades to make science more relevant and to let scientists respond to big societal challenges like climate crisis or aging society or innovative Europe or all these challenges that you have. Then you typically have all kinds of research programs that try to seduce scientists to devote their time to these challenges. And one of the common finding is that you see a lot of window dressing, so that scientists then sell their research in terms of, actually I'm doing this, and if only you could give me some money, then I can contribute to these challenges, whereas they are actually much more interested in something else. So I have one example, which is from a study some time ago about hydrogen as an energy carrier. There were great hopes that that hydrogen could be a good solution to replace something else, to replace fossil fuels. But then, so hydrogen is not so easy to carry around. So there were various options to have onboard storage of hydrogen, and one of them was metal hydrides. So these are structures, molecular structures that could be used to be filled with hydrogen. So so there was this whole field of metal hydride was then mobilized, or they were seduced to work on storing hydrogen in those lattices of metal hydride. And so they really clearly also said, well, we are interested in studying metal hydrides. That's our field. This is what we want to do. And this is just one of the options that passes along, and now there's a lot of money for it, so we just go with the bandwagon of hydrogen for some time, but when that stops, well, we will find something else. So they are not really committed to hydrogen as a solution for societal problems, but they are committed to studying hydrogen, metal hydride. So there's a lot of window dressing there, and I think every scientist recognizes that. And sometimes they feel a bit guilty about it. Sometimes they feel, well, this is just how the game is being played. And of course, that raises all kinds of questions for policymakers and others who are interested in mobilizing science for the good purposes, including in transition studies. So I try to start from the other corner. So if this is not what inspires scientists to work on societal challenges, what does inspire them? What is their internal motivation to work on topics and to make these research investments? They spend their whole lives to things. What is it? And so that's the other corner. And then maybe you can also see how those internal ideas of where to go change under pressure. So does the climate crisis change the internal ideas of where to go, or is it really that stable over centuries? Probably not. There will be these ideas of where to go, these imaginaries will be dynamic, but, well, what dynamic is it? So I think starting from on the corner, still trying to, help scientists in becoming relevant. Yeah.
Question, why do scientists pursue one idea or another? And I guess the answer is more complicated than just funding streams.
Yeah, sure. No, but that's my whole idea. So it's more than funding streams. They somehow have ideas of where to go and what is a feasible road, what is a desirable road, what indeed will bring you a great career or maybe even in the end the Nobel Prize. So what is it? And and that funding is used as a resource to follow those imaginaries. So it's the other way around. So you follow the imaginaries and use the funding to get there. And in the meantime, the funding changes a bit where science is going. I mean, it's not useless, but it's not really at the core of what they really find interesting.
I can imagine that epistemic imaginaries of younger, early career researchers and more senior, the processes are different. Because they are guided by a bit of a different incentives. Do you account for that? Who do you look at?
Yeah, so no, that's for sure. And there's been a lot of research on how young and early careers researchers differ from established researchers. And the typical example goes even back to Merton, who shows that the real breakthroughs are probably from very young or very established scholars, because the very young they don't know actually what they can risk something adventurous, and because there's not so much at stake yet. And the other really established scholars, they have proven their membership, so they can now feel free to do something crazy. Whereas the in between, they have a lot to lose. It's important for them to be seen as a relevant member, and to have some progress and to have results that will sustain their scholarship and membership of the field. So that's one difference that is already quite known for a long time, but what I expect to find is that no matter where you are in your career, that still those imaginaries are are generic, so it's available for everyone in the field, and that they are discussed and exposed at conferences or in editorials or in awards, and so that the field shows to its members what are the promising directions, and then you can decide what to do with that. So as a young scholar, you might think, well, then I should go to those promising routes, or as an established scholar, you could think, well, maybe it's time that I now really dedicate my time to this, and and be more adventurous.
And I suppose it also differs geographically.
Yeah.
Global South, global North.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't know. That is an empirical question. So, yeah, indeed. So the studies of science and science development have on the one hand stressed that it's a very cosmopolitan affair, so that the fields are very international, but also showed that there are quite some local differences and traditions, and that some countries can be good at one particular approach, and there will be differences, but I'm not sure how fine-grained my picture will be in the end. But you're right. So there will be national differences.
And it already sounds relevant for the sustainability transitions. For how and why do people, as you said, why do they do or do not get inspired by the climate crisis and sustainability?
Yes, or more indirectly, that because of the climate crisis, that the whole imaginaries change. So, for instance, in chemistry, a lot of chemistry is based on fossil fuels and on production processes that are based on fossil fuel availability. But you could imagine that gradually there are some novel directions there. Where this idea of non-fossil fuel chemistry is becoming, these are one of the, if you really want to have a career, you should invest time and effort in those directions, because this is where we will go in the future. I'm not sure whether that is already there, but it could be that the imaginary changes.
Looking forward to when you present this research.
Good.
Is there anything else you would like to share with the transitions people in this podcast?
Well, So what I would like to share is that I think it's important that the transitions community looks a lot at very global changes. For instance, the fossil fuel dependency, but it's also good to have these local initiatives and to see what happens there. So this connection, what happens locally to global developments and challenges, that is, I think that will be core for the next decade, how those connections can be made. And that, so thus far we've seen a lot of weighting from the local on the global, and the global on the local, but probably they should move independently and learn from each other. So,
Well, I have one more question. What kind of movies do you like? It's a real question that I have.
It's a real, okay. What kind of movies? Yeah.
We mentioned Rocky.
No, Rocky is not so much, but intriguing movies with beautiful visuals, and so absolutely no violence. That really, that then becomes not a pleasure to watch. But movies where something special is happening. For instance, American Beauty. So, these visuals there, it's really mesmerizing, and I like that when the movie makes use of its medium, visuality, and brings you to some other way of looking at the world.
Beautiful and cerebral, I suppose. Very kind of intellectually stimulating.
Intellectually stimulating. Well, that sounds so. No, but it's it's much more interesting and captivating when you really are taken to some corners that you haven't expected.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Harro, for your time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, a pleasure.